The Utah Mammoth have so many guys signed under contract, and it is going to be ridiculously hard to crack this year's lineup. So let's take a look at some possible combinations of where people might play and also who we think might sneak into this lineup. All right, now looking at this is Puckpedia. This is kind of the depth chart of what they are predicting for this year. I think right now Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, those two are pretty much set. The first option here comes at the right wing position, which is Vincent Trocheck. I think you will see him play on that top line based on everything that's been hinted by Bill Armstrong this year during various interviews. I just think he'll also fit well with them. He's going to kind of bring a physical presence to that line, something that line has severely lacked over the years. I know I've talked about this with some people that think, hey, maybe Anders Lee should be on that line. And I understand the logic there. The reason why I kind of don't want Anders to play on that line is Anders Lee is strictly a left wing. If Anders Lee were to move to that top line, that means Clayton Keller would have to move back to the right side. And honestly, at this point in his career, I think Clayton Keller is just better on the left wing. So that brings me to our second line here. And this is where I'm sliding Anders Lee in. So I think you're going to have Lee play with Cooley and Gunther. And guys, I grew up an Islanders fan. I have watched every single game of Anders Lee's career. And I can tell you right now, he will do wonders for Logan Cooley and Dylan Gunther. So one thing I saw a lot of when watching Cooley and Gunther kind of play together is they generate a lot off the rush, but it's pretty much a one and done. They go in there, they get their chance, puck's out of the zone, and they're going back. Well, I think Anders Lee is going to change that dynamic here because Anders Lee is a guy who can win every single board battle. So if the shot is missed, Anders Lee is going to be right there along the boards fighting to get that puck back and getting it back to the two of them so they can generate more chances. Now, not only that, but Anders Lee is a huge net front presence. You better believe that he's going to be standing right in front of every single goaltender, setting a screen and giving Cooley and Gunther an opportunity to score or get a tip from Lee himself. So not only should we see the production of Gunther go up even more, which is crazy because he had 40 something goals last year, but I think Logan Cooley is going to benefit tremendously from playing with an Anders Lee, somebody who's going to be able to cycle the puck with him. And set that screen, allowing him to create and generate more offense and more goals this season. So I absolutely love Anders Lee on the second line. And not only that, another thing that's really overlooked is Anders Lee will drop the glove. Like, if somebody gets in Cooley or Gunther's face, you better believe Anders Lee is not going to hesitate to go after whoever is trying to bully them there. Okay, so I think it's going to bring so much to the table. Now, some people say, yeah, well, Anders Lee isn't going to be able to keep up speed-wise with the two of them, and for the most part, that is true. However, I'll argue that it doesn't matter because I feel like you generate more offense from 2-on-1s than you do 3-on-1s. I feel like sometimes when you have a 3-on-1, people get too cute, too fancy. There's one too many passes, and when you're on a 2-on-1, it's very simple. You know what you got to do. There's no overthinking it. So I think that's going to be fine for them. I don't worry. You don't need Vincent Trocheck to have 3 speed guys on one line, in my opinion, personally. Anders Lee, though, I think he's just going to do so much for this team, and he's going to be a guy that's not going to be easily pushed over. All right, let's go down to the third line here. Now, this is the first one I kind of disagree with Puckpedia here. So they have Lawson Crouse with Barrett Hayton and Michael Carconi. I made this bold claim, submitted it to Salt Lake City with Utah Mammoth Daily. If you don't watch that, make sure you go check them out. But this is where I think you're going to see a surprise here. One guy who I think not many people are thinking crack the opening night roster is Daniil But. But I think you will see Daniil But end up in that third line left wing spot to start the year. Now, Daniil But last season, if you weren't paying attention, put up 39 points in 41 AHL games. That is nearly a point per game production, and in that span, he put up 19 goals as well. I think that he's going to show up at training camp, is going to really impress, and I think you're going to see him slot into that third line left wing. Um, Barrett Hayton here seems like the default pick for center. Um, the one guy I will kind of give an outside shot to landing this position would be T. Ginla. Um, I think Tej has a chance to go ahead and take that third line center spot, even though personally I see Tej more as a left winger. And I think in the future, we're going to see a line of Gunther, Cooley, and Tej Ginla. I just don't think it will be this year yet. So I think Tej has a spot to take that third line center away from Hayton here. But I don't see it to start the season. So right now I'm going to slide in Barrett Heaton. Now on the third line, right wing here, again, I'm going to move Carconi out for a second. We're going to put back in Lawson Krause. I mean, Lawson Krause coming off a big year last year. I just can't see any way that he's not in the lineup. I think the third line winger spot is a perfect role for him. I think this line of Krause, Hayton, and Boot would be a powerhouse line. These are three bigger guys who can really hit and do some damage. We saw what Boot did in the AHL last year. We saw what Krause kind of did. I'd like to see a bounce back year from Hayton, who tends to start the year off a little bit slow and kind of disappear before picking it up a little bit in the second half. I would like to see some more consistency from the beginning of the year and see what he can do. But my third line is Boot, Hayton, and Krause. Now, fourth line is also going to be a little bit interesting here. You can go a few different ways. I think you will see McBain and Stenlund in some combination, but I also think you have to get Michael Carconi back in this lineup. So I think you're going to see Jack McBain and Carconi in the lineup along with Kevin Stenlund. If Tej Ginla does make the opening night roster and takes over that third line center spot, I think you'll kind of see Barrett Hayton move down and replace Stenlund here. I understood when they kind of signed Stenlund, they want him for his face-off draws and whatnot, but how much is that really needed now that you have Vincent Trocheck in the lineup and you also have Barrett Hayton? So Vincent Trocheck, for those of you who don't know, is really good on special teams and he's a really good face-off drawer. So I think he's somebody that can kind of make up for Kevin Stenlund. So I'm not sure about that signing right now, as I do think we have too many guys signed, and that's going to force some really good players out of the lineup. For instance, right now, you're leaving Kyler Yamamoto out of the lineup, and he's definitely a guy that deserves a spot on this team, especially after what he did last season coming down the playoff stretch here. But I think that's where we're at right now. Some other notes: I don't think we will see Brandon Tanev this year unless there's some catastrophic incident. Caleb Desnoyers, a lot of you saw that he just got injured. I don't expect him to make this team out of camp, or I didn't expect him to be in the lineup this year in the NHL anyway. He was probably kind of more set for the AHL, and we'll see what happens with his development down there. Liam O'Brien, everyone loves Spicy Tuna here. Again, another guy that should not see time in the lineup this year unless things go really wrong. Tej Ginla, I think he's got a chance, like we said before, but not sure if this is the year for him. Gabe Smith, love what he's doing right now, and I think he will have a role in this team in the future as, a bottom line guy, maybe that third, fourth line center role. Interested to see what he can do. Kyler Yamamoto, again, I think he's going to be the first guy that gets called up when one of these guys goes down, because we have a lot of center depth too. So it's going to be very easy to shift some guys around and kind of play them where they need to. And I think you'll see Yamamoto at some point enter the lineup with one of the first injuries here. We did sign Joshua Waugh to a contract here, but I don't think we'll see him up at the NHL level. I think you'll be seeing him a lot at the AHL level. Moving on to defense here, we have first line, Mikhail Sergachev and Kenzie Weegar. I think that's pretty much set in stone and locked in. Nate Schmidt and John Marino, one of the best combinations of defensemen last year. John Marino, obviously just earned that new contract and well-deserved. I believe he was a plus 42 last season, which was just absolutely insane. This year's, you're going to see Simashev start off the year. on the team. I think he's going to get right into the lineup here. And this last spot is actually really interesting because we have three guys, in my opinion, that could take that spot. Andrew Peeke, you have Maverick Lamoureux, and Nick DeSimone. Honestly, this is going to be a really tough call because Nick DeSimone does have the experience with the team. He was kind of relied on a lot last year, and it feels like he should have the edge over Peeke here. I really like Maverick Lamoureux and what he's done in the past when he's been called up. And the question is he going to be the guy that they trust right off the gate here? Well, I think we're going to see Maverick Lamoureux at some point, but I think right now, I think you're going to start with Nick DeSimone. I think, you just don't want to put really two really young players together from the start with Simashev and Lamoureux to start the season. I just think too much can go wrong there. DeSimone provides a little bit more of that veteran leadership. So that's why I'm going to slot Nick DeSimone in. But I think Maverick Lamoureux will be the first call-up. And I really feel that the team wants to get Maverick in the lineup. I think we think that he's going to be a big part of this team in the future. It's just so hard when there's, only a few spots and only a few guys can get in there. But he's only got to beat out a couple players to get into this lineup, and we know there's going to be an injury at some point. So, Maverick, be ready. All right, then we get to the goaltending situation. I think it's no surprise here. We have Karel Vejmelka starting. Obviously, he's had an up and down career. I thought he was pretty good for us last year. However, down the stretch, kind of started to fade a little bit. I think that was due to some overuse issues. Hopefully now by signing Sebastian Cossa to a deal, hopefully he's going to be someone that we can rely on a little bit more and can take the pressure off of Veggie so that he doesn't have to, carry the workload so much throughout the season. I believe that Veggie actually had the most wins by a goaltender last year in the NHL, and it wasn't because, he was just that amazing. It was just because he was playing that much. So hopefully giving him some more rest between games will keep him fresher and allow Utah to steal a few more games here. Again, Cossa really liked this trade and signing that we had for him. I think he's going to give a real chance to prove himself this year. And Michael Hrabal, he's going to be your starting goaltender in the AHL. It's going to be really interesting to see how he handles that assignment. And again, if he plays really well, there's a chance that he could just come up right away as well and, fight for one of these two spots. The goaltending situation is going to be something to pay attention to over the next few years as, there's some really talented young players right here that could really push for a starting role and will cause management to have to make some decisions in the future. So I'm very curious to see what will happen with that. But that's what I'm predicting so far for this year. My one big surprise, Daniil But gets in the lineup. I also have another prediction on that. And Daniil But is going to be, I believe, using the number 50 this year at the NHL level. And I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up 50 points in the NHL this season. So just something to pay attention to. Will be a fun season. Let me know, what do you agree with? What don't you agree with? Where do you think some of these guys will be playing? Do you think Trocheck will be on the first line? Will Anders Lee be on the second line? Do you think But could even play on the second line at some point? These are all questions I would love to hear some feedback on, so let me know in the comments below.